Hello again. This time we're going to be looking at Plato's Republic. I've got another video or two that will introduce you to the allegory of the cave and his view of reality, the forms or ideas. Basically, the real chair is not the one I'm sitting in, it's the idea of chair that we perceive, not with our senses, but with our intellect, with our reason. What I want to get into in this video is how this connects up to Plato's ideal society. After all, that's what the Republic is about. What Plato envisions as an ideal society. And it has to do really with his concept of the human soul. Every human soul, Plato thinks, is made up of three elements. Appetite, by which he means desires. Passion, by which he means not only emotions, but also the will. And reason, the intellect. Of these, the lowest is the appetite, desire. After all, after I finish one of these videos, I'm thirsty. I like to get something to drink. How is that different from my dog going out in the backyard to bark at squirrels and then coming inside and heading for the water bowl? It isn't. It's exactly the same. Our appetites, our desires for food, for drink, for sex, for pleasure, for things. For Plato, this is the lowest element in the soul, but we all have it. We also all have the passion. But this too we share with other animals. When I was teaching my classes in person, when it was safe to do that, when I got home at the end of the day, my dog would generally come running with her tail wagging and jump up wanting me to pet her. It looked like she was excited that I had come home. You know, if any of you have pets, you know that in many cases they share, especially if they're mammals, they share our emotions. And they also have what looks like a will. We had a dog that loved to ride in the car. And when we were, sometimes when we were going on vacation, you load up the car the night before. Well, the only way we could load the car up was to let the dog sit in the car. Otherwise she would be constantly underfoot. If ever the door to the house and the door to the car were open at the same time, even for an instant, the dog was in the car. That looks like a will. I want to ride. The third element in the human soul is reason, the intellect. And this, I think, is more different in us than it is in other animals. Certainly the Hellenic era and people like Plato, and for that matter Aristotle, thought so. I have never tried to explain Plato to any of my dogs. They're doing good to understand stay or come. With college students, I think there's a chance. Some of you will get it, some of you will kind of get it, but there's a shot. With a dog, not so much. You know, if you put a dog in front of a mirror, the dog will never figure out that it's looking at itself in the mirror. Past a certain age, babies do. Chimpanzees do. Gorillas do. Monkeys don't. Dogs don't. Okay. It's just not there. Now, what's unique about Plato is he thinks that every person's soul, while it has all three of these elements, is controlled by one or the other of them. And his vision of the ideal society is one in which everyone is in the role for which the makeup of their own individual soul best suits them. Those who are dominated by their appetites, they're oriented towards things and they're motivated by things. Plato says, let them be your artisans, your craftsmen, the people who make stuff. Got to have them. You know, aren't you glad that there are people who build buildings? Would you like to be living outside in Louisiana weather? And since they're motivated by desire for things, Plato says, let them own property. Let them make money. Let them marry so that they, in a sense, own a spouse. When you're married, there is a sense in which you belong to each other. The one thing you must not do with these people, Plato says, you must not allow them to hold political power. Because if their orientation is towards making money, if they hold political power, they will use that power to make money for themselves and those close to them. Did you notice that the lion's share of the Trump tax cut benefited the super rich? You think that's an accident? I don't. Anybody want to take a guess at what Plato would say is wrong with American society? We are run by business people. And business people are oriented towards making money. So when they hold political power, they use it to give themselves and their friends benefits. Those who are dominated by the passions, who have a very strong will, very disciplined, let them, Plato says, be your warriors. Every society needs people who protect it against outside enemies. I mean, after all, how long does any country last without an army? The answer is only as long as its neighbors want it to. And in ancient times, the army and the police force were basically the same organization. They're not that anymore, but it is my observation that the military and law enforcement tend to attract the same kind of people. And Plato says, you know, let them be your warriors. Give them uniforms to wear, to honor them. When they do their job well, give them medals. They like order and discipline. Let them live in barracks. The warriors and the highest class, the guardians in Plato's society, would come together only for breeding. And neither one of them would own anything. All their needs would be met government issue. But they wouldn't. Plato doesn't think that they're controlled by the desire for things. As long as their needs are met, they're cool with that. But only those whose souls are governed by reason, who can grasp the more abstract, higher ideas like truth and goodness and justice, they are the only ones who are suited to hold political power, and they would be what Plato calls the guardians. Now, he says you're going to have to make these people hold political power. because they're not going to want to. They want to spend their time doing philosophy and abstract thought. But Plato is interested in what is best for the community as a whole, not what individuals want. Now, the way this would work is that the educational system, and I gave you a little bit of the discussion of the elements of the soul, beginning line 220. The educational system would be set up so everybody starts in it together. Plato does not connect class with money. In fact, the only class that owns any property as individuals is the lowest class, the artisans. And likewise, Plato does not connect the class of the parent with that of the child. For Plato, it's perfectly possible that two artisans would have a child whose soul is governed by reason, and so who should be a guardian. For example, my dad was an insurance underwriter, worked for Hartford Insurance. My mom worked in the cafeteria at a nursing home and later at my high school. Both of them had an associate's degree, 2 years of college. I would be bored to tears doing one of those kind of jobs. And I have 3 degrees, a bachelor's degree, 4 years of college, a master's degree, 3 years after that of seminary, and a PhD, 3 years after that of grad school. So a total of 10 years post-high school. Because I love talking about things like Plato's Republic. To me, this is fun. And likewise, Plato, shockingly in ancient Greece that didn't educate its daughters very well, Plato envisions female intellectuals. And 2 guardians might well have a child whose soul is controlled by the appetite, and so who needs to be an artisan. There's no connection in Plato's Republic between the class of the parent and that of the child. Social class would not be inherited. Plato did not address race in the sense that we use that word. He's writing in Athens, everybody's Greek. But had he done so and been consistent, that too would have been completely separate. I, for one, see no reason to think that people with one skin color would tend to have one sort of soul. I don't think there's any such thing as a black soul or a white soul. There's a human soul. Now, the way this would work is everybody would start in the educational system together. And it would be structured in such a way that when you get to a certain point in the curriculum, those whose souls are dominated by the appetite don't get it. And when they reach that point, then that identifies them, and they then go into what we would call vo-tech education. What do I mean you don't get it? Well, the last math class I took was a high school trigonometry course. Would have been in the fall of 1973. I managed to muddle through and make a B. But not only did I not really understand what I was doing, let alone why, I'm still not even sure exactly what trig is. And that's when I realized that math was not my field. Okay? That I belong in the humanities disciplines. I'm a word person, not a number person. See, there's different kinds of intelligence. There's also mechanical intelligence, by the way. There's emotional intelligence, the understanding of human emotion. If aptitude tests had been invented, those tests you take that will tell you what you're good at, what you're not good at, they would have fit right in with Plato's educational system. When you get further into the curriculum, when you start getting into things like music theory and mathematics and philosophy, those whose souls are dominated by the passion won't get it. And at that point, then that separates them out and they become your warriors. Those who do get those higher, more abstract disciplines, they become your guardians because they're the ones who understand justice and goodness and truth and those kind of abstract thoughts. Now, a couple things I like about Plato's Republic. Everybody starts off the same. There is no connection between the class of the parent and the class of the child. And the educational system is the same for everybody. They're all in it together. Is that really true of our educational system? Or if you grow up in a more affluent area, do you go to better schools and tend to get a better education than those on the poor side of town? And economics plays no role. Like I said, only the lowest class are the ones who hold political power. Who hold wealth, excuse me. The guardians and the warriors, would live in government-provided housing. Their needs are taken care of, but they don't have any money as such. Boy, would that change the nature of American politics if you could somehow take money out of it. A lot of people don't like the idea of Plato's Republic because there's no room in it for freedom. I think Plato can respond to that in part in two ways. One is the way he does respond, and that is that he's interested in what's good for the community as a whole, not necessarily for each individual. But he could also point out that, do you really think somebody is going to be happy if they're setting their heart on doing something that they're no good at? It'd be kind of like me, all 5'8" of me, wanting to play in the NBA. I don't think so. And besides that, I can't dribble, I can't shoot, I can't rebound, I'm not much good at defense. Have I covered everything that's part of the game? I'm going to be miserable because I stink at it. When I was in high school PE, I always hated playing basketball because I was no good. I could hold my own at football and softball and soccer, but basketball, I stunk. If that's my goal, I'm setting myself up for disappointment. I think the real problem with Plato's Republic, it's too high. I don't think that even those of us who are intellectuals, and I would count myself in that group, are not as free of passion and of appetite as Plato envisions. As much as I care about your education, I cared even more about my own kids. Okay? We're not as selfless as Plato envisions. See you next time. We'll talk about Aristotle.